What's up, everybody? My name's Nukinfutz because I'm effing nuts. I've been getting a lot of messages about how to parse better, so I decided to make a top 10 ways to improve your parses as a Demo Warlock. Let's get right into things with number 1. Finding out when to use your Metamorphosis based on your guild's kill times. You can lose a ton of DPS by either missing an entire meta, or by using it at an inopportune time. A good example to think about is a noob, without Zerg of course. You will always meta phase 1 and have it up for re-emerge, but your second meta in the fight is entirely kill time dependent. If you have a kill time of around 5 minutes on a noob, then you want to meta on re-emerge, and then also right near the end of the fight in phase 3. But most of us have kill times under this, usually around the 4-minute mark. In this scenario, if you meta right at re-emerge, then you will not have a third meta in time before the boss dies. So this means it is actually correct to save your second meta until phase 3, when Bloodlust is typically popped. Most fights it is best to get as many metas as you can, but knowing kill times and when to save your meta for a more opportune time will improve your parses. Another cooldown based reason is to use your NG gloves more. Engineering gloves are a big 340 haste for 12 seconds on only a 1-minute cooldown. It is ideal to pop these off cooldown throughout the fight unless a moment of downtime is about to happen. You can wait a couple seconds if execute is about to happen so that you can use the haste on soulfires instead, but generally you are just popping off cooldown all day long. I better not see any more logs of you guys waiting multiple seconds to pop your gloves, or else I'll be even more depressed. And if you aren't an engineer, then you definitely need to go get it already. Moving on to number 3. Inefficient globals while moving. We as Demo Warlocks hate to move as it is, but we have to sometimes. And when we do, we need to be in the habit of life tapping or refreshing a dot if needed. Moving without using a global will hurt you immensely if you consistently do it. A good example of this is Festergut. You will constantly have to move to stack on spores and then back to your spread spot and also moving out of the green goo being thrown at you. Using a quick life tap will save you a global later by not having a life tap during a part of the fight where you're just sitting there blasting. TOGC doesn't require a lot of movement, but ICC will have some bosses where movement is a lot more common. So learning this habit will definitely help improve your parses. On to number 4, which I see a ton of new Demo Warlocks not doing, is you need to snapshot your dots with meta. The 20% damage during meta translates to your dots as well. If I could slap your hand every time you start a pull and cast Doom right before meta, I would. There are some instances where it is best to just cast Shadow Bolt and wait until Bloodlust goes out after a couple seconds. An example of this is on Algalon when the boss is being moved to the edge of the room. You would Shadow Bolt once or twice, and then finally meta and throw up your dots when the lust goes out. Another good habit is to attempt to fit in 2 Immolates during every single meta. You have about a 6-second window to reapply an Immolate near the end of your meta duration. This will carry on the 20% damage from meta throughout the rest of the Immolate duration, even after your meta fades. Immolate is extremely powerful, so it is very important that you do this. It is also worth it to wait a few seconds for meta to come off CD to refresh your Immolate or Doom if the timing works out that way. I wouldn't recommend more than a global or 2 of waiting, but if done properly, then it is some more free damage from your dots. With all this said, I better not see one of you guys casting dots right before your meta ever again. Speaking of meta, let's move on to reason number 5, positioning an Immolation aura. Positioning during a boss, or even before the boss is active, is vital to obtain the most value out of your Immolation auras. We as Demo Warlocks are unique in the fact that even as ranged casters, we want to be near the boss for every meta if we can. The trick is to use our globals effectively, and to move while doing instant casts that we would normally cast anyways. Preparing for an upcoming Metamorphosis and being in range for Immolation Aura is important, and you should be thinking about doing this during every boss encounter. Next up, we have reason number 6, pre-potions and second potions. Before almost every boss in the game, you should make sure to hit that pre-pot wild magic. There are some exceptions to this, like Northrend Beast and Yogg Saron, where the combat starts a while before any actual meaningful combat, but in those instances a pre-flame cap is usually the play. Arguably even more important than your pre-pot is your second potion. You can play into a support role even more with another wild magic for the demonic pact increase, or you can shoot for an even higher parse with a potion of speed, ideally during execute, when you're slinging out big soul fires into some boss's ass. Missing either of these potions is pretty detrimental to your parse, so do not forget them. Another way to improve your parse is to avoid clipping your dots. This isn't WoD yet, where every class with dots can clip it with the pandemic window. So, you must allow the dot to fully expire before refreshing to get the maximum value. Everybody does it on accident occasionally, so don't feel too bad if you happen to do it once during a boss fight, but you should not make a habit of it. This is especially prevalent on Immolate, as there is a cast time making it a bit more difficult to gauge when the precise moment is to start casting Immolate. The cast time will vary with your haste value, such as during Bloodlust, so you have to be mindful of this. I have a weak aura on my Immolate tracker, which helps with this issue by glowing when it will not clip the end of the Immolate, but ultimately you will get the feel for it anyways with more practice. Speaking of dot management, reason number 8 is to not dot up the boss at the very end of the fight. This is self-explanatory, but sometimes you might accidentally immolate with only like 6 seconds left in the fight, and essentially waste a global instead of just shooting off another soulfire. You should attempt to guess how long the boss will be up, and then determine whether or not a certain dot will be worth the global. There are some instances where this is fine to do, such as when your guild is about to kill a new boss for the first time, or if there's a lot of deaths and the boss might not go down before you perish. But in general, when parsing on bosses, you assume the pull will be fairly clean and you should avoid dotting up a boss who is less than 10 seconds from falling over. Now for the penultimate way to improve your parses is to gear correctly. This means just above or below your hit cap, gems, having tailoring and engineering as your professions, and using the right enchants. Starting off with hit rating, I have seen countless demo warlocks, and just players in general, way above hit cap. You can be slightly under hit cap and be okay, but every extra amount of hit rating over cap is just a wasted stat. You are looking for 14% hit if you are Horde, with access to an S-Priest or Boomy, and 13% if you're Alliance, as well as a Draenei in your group. So please, double check your hit situation and attempt to fix it ASAP if it isn't already. The second most common issue I see with gearing is simply using the wrong gems in gear. For the most part, we are using Rune Cardinals in a ton of sockets and then Purified Dreadstones in most blue sockets. Orange sockets are typically just filled with Rune Cardinals, but sometimes Veiled Amatrins for a bit more hit rating if needed. And please double check if your meta gem Chaotic Skyflare Diamond is actually active via 2 blue gems. For professions, you should more often than not have tailoring and engineering. The tailoring cloak proc is very nice for bigger demonic packs on average, as well as a boost to your personal DPS. Engineering is amazing for mobility with nitro boots, and then hyperspeed accelerators are a nice taste increase on a low cooldown. Not to mention having access to Serenite bombs and sapper charges for even more DPS. If you aren't playing with engineering, then you need to get it now and you'll never look back. And a less common mistake I see with gearing is simply using the wrong enchants. Don't skimp out on the best spell power enchant for your weapon, or spell power to your bracers, or whatever other pricey enchant you need for your character. To parse well and to parse consistently, you need to have all of the free stats and advantages that are available to you. Last but not least, we have the idea of Decimation Sniping. Most of you already know what this is, but it is vital in some encounters. Decimation Sniping refers to using a Shadow Bolt, Incinerate, or Soulfire on an enemy below 35% to proc the Decimation buff, to then use the preceding Soulfires on an enemy who is not actually in the execute phase yet. This is especially prevalent on Jaraxxus, where you can proc Decimation off of the Portal, Mistresses, Volcano, or even Infernals he spawns, to then use that buff against Jaraxxus for a few seconds. There are more advanced ways of sniping that involve using a rank 1 Shadow Bolt to quickly proc Decimation on enemies that you can't cast a max rank Shadow Bolt on in time, or if they do not count for your parse. So the extra damage and cast time of a max rank Shadow Bolt is unneeded. Decimation Sniping is useful on many bosses, but you definitely need to practice it now because Blood Prince Council and ICC will use this mechanic to the fullest. The two inactive bosses being under 35% HP allows you to rank 1 Shadow Bolt them all fight long for basically infinite soulfires onto your main target. It will be quite the challenging fight to parse well on without being comfortable Decimation Sniping. But that is my top 10 ways to improve your parses. I hope this video helps you guys achieve some big lock-ins in future weeks, or at least was entertaining. If you liked this video, feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Stay tuned for more videos in big parses, and don't forget to keep pumping and being Nukinfutz.